It all started from above. Our history books tell us that discoveries were made by ships, camels, or on foot. Think of Christopher Columbus, Magellan, the caravans crossing the deserts. For thousands of years, humanity could only see what was right in front of its nose as far as the horizon allowed. But sometimes, to truly see something, you have to get very far away from it. You have to get so far away that the earth slips from beneath your feet, leaving its place to that infinite silent void. The year is 1965. America's Gemini 4 mission. Astronauts James McDivitt and Ed White are floating in Earth's orbit. Their mission is clear: to perform a spacewalk and, more importantly, to look for circular features down on the Earth's surface. Why? Because scientists at the time were trying to understand the origin of lunar craters and wanted to use meteor craters on Earth as a reference. Their eyes were on massive impact scars. As the capsule passed over the African continent, over that vast Sahara Desert, McDivitt looked down, and he saw the thing that, we can guess, took his breath away. It was there, in the middle of that infinite nothingness made of sand and rock. A giant eye staring right back at you, yes, exactly at you, towards space. This was not a mirage. This was not a smudge on the camera lens. This was the eye of the Sahara, scientifically known as the Richat Structure. Now, I want you to stop and think for a moment. If you live in New York, think of Manhattan, or if you are in Istanbul, the Bosphorus. This structure is so massive, it is exactly 40 to 50 kilometers in diameter. Do you know what this means? If you were standing right now in the very center of the Richat Structure, right where the pupil of the eye would be, when you looked around, you would see nothing. Just flat land, some rocks, a little sand. The horizon would be lost within the sheer magnitude of the structure. The people living inside this structure for centuries, even for thousands of years, never realized where they were living, because the eye was visible only to gods or to astronauts. When the astronauts reported this to NASA, everyone's first reaction was, "Okay, we found it. This must be a massive meteor crater." It makes sense, doesn't it? A giant rock from space must have crashed into the middle of the Sahara, shaking the earth and sky, leaving behind this massive circular scar, just like the crater in Arizona. For years, it was written in textbooks like this: a massive impact scar. But then, geologists went there into the heart of the eye, and that is when the great doubt began. When a meteor strikes, it leaves behind a special signature called shocked quartz. Rocks vitrified by extreme heat and pressure. Melted materials. But at Richat, there were none. Zero. So they said, okay, if it's not a meteor, this is definitely a volcano. The mouth of the volcano must have collapsed. They looked again. Volcanic rocks? Magma remnants? Yes, there are some, but there is no center of volcanic activity that would create this structure, this massive dome. It is not a caldera. So then what is it? The currently accepted scientific explanation, and whether calling this an explanation is satisfying is up to you, is that it is a geological dome. Hundreds of millions of years ago, immense magma pressure from beneath the Earth's crust pushed upwards, swelling the land like a blister. Then wind and water, yes, especially water, eroded this dome over millions of years. The soft rocks washed away, the hard rocks remained. The result? A structure with perfect rings, peeled open layer by layer like an onion. Sounds logical, doesn't it? Nature, wind, erosion. But I have to stop you right there, because the human brain loves patterns. And when it looks at something, if that thing is too perfect, an alarm goes off in our minds. Nature is chaotic. Nature is asymmetrical. Look at the mountains. Look at the rivers. Look at the coastlines. They are all random. They are all broken. But Richat, when you look at Richat from above, you see those rings that look as if they were drawn with a compass, interlocking, almost perfect circles. mountains to the north, a sea of sand to the south. But there it stands, amidst all this chaos, as if someone stamped a seal right there. This desolate corner of Mauritania. Why here? The few adventurers and scientists who go to the region say there is a strange energy there, a place where compasses sometimes go haywire, where magnetic anomalies are seen. But what is more interesting are the archaeological findings in the area. This place we call desolate was not always desolate. Around the eye, Stone Age tools, spearheads made by human hands have been found. So people were here. Someone was living in the shadow of this massive structure, perhaps right inside it. But did they know what they were living inside of? Or was this place just a safe, watery paradise surrounded by rings for them? I said watery, did you notice? Forget those scorching yellow sands you see right now. Throw that Sahara Desert image in your mind into the trash for a moment. Because the biggest key to this story is hidden not under the sands, but in the reality of what those sands once were. If you think this structure is just a geological oddity, you might be mistaken. Because in the next part, I will tell you the greatest detective story in history. We will go to the 4th century BC, to Athens. We will open the dusty parchments of the famous philosopher Plato. And there we will place the spine-chillingly specific measurements, colors, and shapes Plato used when describing Atlantis, side by side with the reshot images taken by NASA satellites today. Did Plato write a myth, or did he hold in his hand a map of this very place we call Richat today? Get ready, because the great doubt is just beginning. We are going to where coincidences end and mathematics begins. Before we dive into the measurements, we need to clarify who we are listening to. We are not talking about a sci-fi writer, a fantasy novelist, or a drunkard telling tales in a tavern. We are talking about Plato, the father of Western philosophy, the student of Socrates, the teacher of Aristotle, a man whose obsession with truth, logic, and mathematics defined the way we think today. If Plato says, "I am going to tell you a story that is strange but absolutely true," you listen. In his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BC, Plato describes a lost civilization. But he doesn't just say, "It was a big city." He gives us blueprints, he gives us colors, he gives us numbers. And this is where things get uncomfortable for the skeptics. Let's pick up Plato's ruler and walk towards the eye of the Sahara. Plato describes the capital of Atlantis not as a chaotic sprawl, but as a masterpiece of geometry. He says the city was composed of concentric rings of water and land. Specifically, he mentions 2 rings of land and 3 rings of water surrounding a central island. Now look at the satellite image of the Richat structure again. What do you see? You don't see a random crater. You see concentric circles, high ridges of rock, followed by deep depressions that would have once held water. If you count the primary rings visible from space, the pattern matches Plato's description with terrifying accuracy. A central island surrounded by a ring of water, then a ring of land, then water again. But shapes can be coincidental, right? Nature makes circles. So let's talk about size. Plato was very specific about measurements. He used a unit called the stadion. He says the diameter of the central city was 127 stadia. When we convert this ancient unit to modern kilometers, we get a figure roughly between 23 and 24 kilometers. Now take your digital ruler on Google Earth and measure the width of the main concentric rings of the Richat structure. Not the entire outer blast zone, but the city part, the distinct rings. The result is approximately 23.5 kilometers. Let that sink in for a moment. We are talking about a margin of error that is almost negligible after thousands of years of erosion. How could a philosopher in Athens, 2,400 years ago, guess the exact diameter of a geological formation in the middle of West Africa? But the coincidences don't stop at geometry. Let's talk about geology. Plato mentions something very peculiar about the architecture of Atlantis. He writes that the builders constructed their walls and temples by quarrying stones from the center of the island and from the outer rings. And he specifically describes the colors of these stones. He says they were white, black, and red. For years, this sounded like a stylistic choice, a nice detail to make the story colorful. But geologists who have analyzed the rock composition of the Richat structure found something that made them pause. The rocks here are not just brown sand. The geological makeup of the eye consists of whitish limestone, black basalt, and reddish sandstone. White, black, red. The exact same color palette Plato described is physically embedded in the geology of this location. If you were to build a city here, using the local materials, your city would be red, black, and white. Is this just another lucky guess? Let's look at the environment. Plato says the city was sheltered by mountains to the north, which protected it from the cold northern winds. And to the south, there was a vast, oblong plain. Look at the topographical map of Mauritania. Just north of the Richat structure, there is a high chain of mountains, and to the south, a long flat corridor of sand that stretches out exactly as described. And there is one more detail, a small but crucial one. Plato says there was a natural spring of fresh water in the very center of the island, provided by the god Poseidon. In a salty desert environment, finding fresh water is a miracle. But geologists confirm that beneath the center of the Richat structure, there is a massive hydrothermal aquifer. Even today, in this arid wasteland, the locals dig wells right in the middle of the eye to access fresh water. So, let's recap. We have a structure with concentric rings of land and water. The number of rings matches, the diameter matches, the colors of the rocks match, the mountains to the north match, the plain to the south matches, the fresh water in the center matches. If this is a coincidence, it is the most statistically impossible coincidence in the history of our planet. Or, Plato was not writing fiction. He was writing a travel guide. But if this is Atlantis, where did the water go? How did a city surrounded by water turn into a skeleton of dust? To understand that, we have to look at the sky again. Not at the stars, but at the sun, and at the mud. Plato said Atlantis was destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune. He said the island sank into the earth and created an impassable barrier of mud, making the ocean unnavigable. Impassable mud. Look at the Sahara today. What is sand, if not dry mud? In the next part, we will explore the green Sahara theory. We will rewind the clock to a time when North Africa was not a desert, but a lush, tropical paradise teeming with life. And we will ask the terrifying question, what happened? What kind of cataclysm could turn a paradise into hell in a single day? The evidence is not just in the rocks anymore. It's in the climate. And the story is about to get much darker. Sand is a liar. It covers everything. It hides the scars of the earth. It makes us believe that the world has always looked the way it does today. When we think of the Sahara, we think of eternal, unchanging heat, a place where life is impossible. But the sand is lying to you. Because if you could rewind the clock just 5,000 to 9,000 years, a blink of an eye in geological time, you wouldn't recognize this place. Welcome to the Green Sahara. Imagine this. Instead of dunes, you see vast savannas. Instead of silence, you hear the roar of lions and the splash of water. In the Tassili Najar caves just north of the Richat, there are ancient rock paintings drawn by people who lived there. And what did they draw? Did they draw camels? No, they drew elephants, they drew giraffes, they drew crocodiles, and most shockingly, they drew people swimming in the middle of what is now the driest place on Earth. This proves that a massive network of rivers and lakes once covered this entire region. And right there, fed by these rivers, connected to the Atlantic Ocean, stood the Richat Structure, not as a dusty crater, but as a vibrant island kingdom. So what went wrong? How does a paradise turn into a graveyard? Plato gave us a clue, a terrifying clue that we ignored for centuries. He said Atlantis was destroyed by earthquakes and floods. He said the island sank and became blocked by impassable mud. He didn't say it vanished into the bottom of the deep ocean like the Titanic. He said mud. Now consider the Younger Dryas impact theory. About 12,800 years ago, a catastrophic event, likely a comet fragment hitting the ice caps, caused a sudden violent rise in sea levels. Imagine a tsunami, but not a coastal wave. Imagine a wall of water kilometers high, sweeping across the African continent, washing over the mountains, carrying millions of tons of mud, silt, and debris. It hits the city, it smashes the rings, it buries the temples. The ground itself undergoes liquefaction, turning solid earth into a soup of quicksand. The city doesn't just fall, it is swallowed. Then the water recedes. It takes centuries, maybe millennia, but the ocean pulls back. The climate shifts. The rain stops. The green turns to yellow. The mud dries, and it turns into stone and sand. What is left behind? Salt. If you go to the Richat Structure today, you will find white, blinding patches of salt covering the ground. Salt is the signature of the ocean. It is the fingerprint of the sea that came, destroyed, and left. We have been looking for Atlantis in the wrong place. We have been sending submarines to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, looking for tall white columns standing on the sea floor. But maybe, just maybe, Atlantis isn't down there. Maybe we are walking right on top of it. Maybe the lost city isn't lost at all, it's just buried, lying beneath our feet, under millions of tons of African sand, waiting for us to brush away the dust of history. The eye of the Sahara is staring at us. It has been staring at us for thousands of years. It's a tombstone the size of a city. And now that we have seen it, now that we know what to look for, the question is no longer, did Atlantis exist? The question is, are we brave enough to dig it up?